the figure of a tiny woman. Also, it was dressed in black, and wore a black covering over the whole head, shrouding it, after the fashion of a bridal veil. From every part of this veil and dress the water fell in heavy drops. The figure bore a small basket on her left arm, and her hand, such a poor, thin little hand, gleamed white in the moonlight. I noticed that on the third finger was a red line, showing that a wedding ring had once been there. The other hand was stretched towards me as though in entreaty. All this I saw in an instant, as it were, and as I saw it horror seemed to grip me by the throat as though it were a living thing, for as the voice had been familiar, so was the form familiar, though the churchyard had received it long years ago. I could not speak, I could not even move.
"Oh, don't you know me yet?" wailed the voice. "And I have come from so far to see you, and I cannot stop. Look, look!" And she began to pluck feverishly with her poor thin hand at the black veil that enshrouded her. At last it came off, and as in a dream I saw what in a dim, frozen way I had expected to see: the white face and pale yellow hair of my dead wife. Unable to speak or to stir, I gazed and gazed. There was no mistake about it. It was she, aye, even as I had last seen her, white with the whiteness of death, with purple circles round her eyes, and the grave cloth yet beneath her chin. Only her eyes were wide open and fixed upon my face, and a lock of the soft yellow hair had broken loose, and the wind tossed it. "You know me now, Frank, don't you, Frank? It has been so hard to come to see you, and so cold. But you are going to be married tomorrow, Frank, and I promised, oh, a long time ago, to think of you when you were going to be married, wherever I was. And I have kept my promise, and I have come from where I am and brought a present with me. It was bitter to die so young. I was so young to die and leave you, but I had to go. Take it, be quick. I cannot stay any longer. I could not give you my life, Frank, so I have brought you my death. Take it." The figure thrust the basket into my hand, and as it did so the rain came up again and began to obscure the moonlight. "I must go, I must go," went on the dreadful familiar voice in a cry of despair. "Oh, why were you so long opening the door? I wanted to talk to you before you married Annie. And now I shall never see you again. Never, never, never. I have lost you forever, ever, ever." As the last wailing notes died away, the wind came down with a rush and a whirl and the sweep as of 1,000 wings, and threw me back into the house, bringing the door to with a crash after me. I staggered into the kitchen, the basket in my hand, and set it on the table. Just then some embers of the fire fell in, and a faint little flame rose and glimmered on the bright dishes on the dresser, even revealing a tin candlestick with a box of matches by it. I was well nigh mad with the darkness and fear, and seizing the matches I struck one and held it to the candle. Presently it caught, and I glanced round the room. It was just as usual, just as the servants had left it, and above the mantelpiece the 8-day clock ticked away solemnly. While I looked at it, it struck 2, and in a dim fashion I was thankful for its friendly sound. Then I looked at the basket. It was a very fine white plated work, with black bands running up it, and a checkered black and white handle. I knew it well. I have never seen another like it. I bought it years ago at Madeira, and gave it to my poor wife. Ultimately it was washed overboard in a gale in the Irish Channel. I remember that it was full of newspapers and library books, and I had to pay for them. Many and many is the time that I have seen that identical basket standing there on that very kitchen table, for my dear wife always used to put flowers in it, and the shortest cut from that part of the garden where her roses grew was through the kitchen. She used to gather the flowers, and then come in and place her basket on the table, just where it stood now, and order the dinner. All this passed through my mind in a few seconds, as I stood there with the candle in my hand, feeling indeed half dead, and yet with my mind painfully alive. I began to wonder if I had gone asleep and was the victim of a nightmare. No such thing. I wish it had only been a nightmare. A mouse ran out along the dresser and jumped onto the floor, making quite a crash in the silence. What was in the basket? I feared to look, and yet some power within me forced me to do it. I drew near to the table and stood for a moment, listening to the sound of my own heart.
Then I stretched out my hand and slowly raised the lid of the basket. "I could not give you my life, so I have brought you my death." Those were her words. What could she mean? And what could it all mean? I must know, or I would go mad. There it lay, whatever it was, wrapped up in linen. Ah, heaven help me! It was a small, bleached human skull! A dream. After all, only a dream by the fire, but what a dream! And I am to be married tomorrow. Can I be married tomorrow? End of Only a Dream by H. Rider Haggard